I want to bring into the conversation Dr. Megan Ranney of Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. She's an emergency room physician on the front lines of this. Dr. Ranney, thank you. I'm grateful for you taking time away from care to help us understand this today. You listened there, the president and the vice president, talking about the ramping up of production of masks, saying that they were doing a much better job, that these were getting, this desperately needed protective gear was getting to the front line. But you also know the Centers of Disease Control put out new guidelines essentially saying recycle, reuse. And after you recycle and reuse, if a mask still isn't good, get a bandana or find something like that. What is the truth on the front lines?
On the front lines, people are terrified. Listen, I work at an unbelievable hospital system that has been preparing for this pandemic since the first reports came out of Wuhan 3 months ago. But the truth is, we cannot get the masks and other protective gear that we need. My governor can't get them. My Department of Health can't get them. We are being told by the CDC to reuse masks. Now, normally, for every patient encounter, we would put a mask on and take a mask off to protect ourselves as well as our patients. And instead, we're being told to reuse masks for days on end to try to preserve them. Docs across the country are starting to get sick, and docs and nurses are worried about what this means for us and for our patients.
Doctor, stay with us as well. I want to bring in Jackie Kucinich of the Daily Beast, Tolu Olorunnipa of the Washington Post, two of our Inside Politics mainstays in terms of the reporting on these big issues in Washington. Jackie, I'll start with you. The president said at one point, we are not a shipping clerk. We are not a shipping clerk, essentially saying this is the responsibility of governors. If you need masks, if you need cloaks, if you need other protective gear for your doctors, that's your job. We'll try to back you up. If you need ventilators or respirators, that's your job. We'll try to back you up. There seemed to be a concerted effort by the President of the United States to say, hey, we're here to help, but this is more your problem, Governor.
Well, right, and I'm sure the call he's going to be having with governors is going to be very interesting later, and you've heard governors express a lot of frustration about what the president has done and where he hasn't been able to help. But I think, and there's this disconnect between we're all in this together and go do it yourself. What we saw there was a president that really was starting to get irritated with the questions about testing, with the questions about the economic potential, consequences, and it didn't provide sort of the comfort that I think a lot of people needed when they tune into those press conferences every day.
Right. The president was more testy today with reporters. He has been more in command, I would say, 2 days ago, and more testy today. Right. It was more political. Tolu, as you come into the conversation, another thing, the president kept talking about how surprised we were by this, and rightly so. He was criticizing China, rightly so, saying China was not honest up front about this. China did not alert the world to this early enough. But the president also suggesting that this came out of the blue. The timeline just suggests otherwise, in the sense that the first case was in December in China. In January, the Chinese authority confirmed it was novel coronavirus. The United States had its first case at the end of January. When it comes to issues like the masks, issues like the supply chain, issues like these great waivers that may have been given to the FDA and the drug companies in recent days, it is a legitimate question to ask, why wasn't that done a couple months ago?
That's exactly right. And blaming China is one thing. It can be done at any point. But right now, the focus has to be on sort of the response here in the U.S. and making sure that the country is able to respond and get control of this virus. The president's bluster and his self-congratulatory praise for his own administration is not going to save lives. It's not going to help solve this problem. It's not going to get more masks to the people who need it. It's not going to stop this virus from spreading. So the president spends so much time congratulating himself and talking about how great of a job he did, and also criticizing China. All of that is fine, but it's not going to actually help solve the problem right now. With this virus spreading, more than 10,000 cases and spreading very rapidly, it seems like much more focus needs to be on what exactly the administration can do to solve some of these problems. Getting masks out there in a very large way to the people who need it, getting testing spreading more quickly around the country.
For those of you who maybe did not follow the entire briefing, I want to come back with Dr. Sanjay Gupta to one of the biggest themes. The president came out. The first thing he said is that there are drugs already approved by the FDA for other ailments that they are hoping now can be used for coronavirus treatment. Here's the president's optimistic take.
We're going to be able to make that drug available almost immediately. And that's where the FDA has been so great. They've gone through the approval process. It's been approved. For the FDA to act the way they acted with this kind of speed is an incredible thing. Normally they'd say, well, we can have it by next year, or we can have it in 2 years from now. You understand? This is the way. Normally it's like years and years and years. They had it immediately.
Again, Sanjay, the president's not a doctor, so maybe we owe him some grace. The president's not in the regulatory environment, so maybe we do owe him some grace. But at this time of a national pandemic, a global pandemic, when people are asking these questions, the president keeps saying words like immediately, act fast, kind of speed. Again, at the end, Dr. Hahn, the FDA commissioner, said he did not want to put a timeline, and he promised the American people, and we thank him for this promise, to do it as quickly as possible, as long as it is safe. But earlier on, he did say it would take months. That's not immediately.
No, well, look, there's a couple of things. First of all, the idea that this is a new drug, we got approval, sort of done something immediately with regard to approval. It's an existing medication, John. This is a well-known medication. Chloroquine is the name of it. It's used to treat malaria, which is a parasite-based infection, not a viral-based infection. So there was, and doctors, people can prescribe this medication off-label if they think it has benefit already. So I don't know there was anything necessarily new with regard to approvals. I think it's worth pointing out that there are trials going on several different medications. This is one of them. And there were some of these trials, early trials, that took place even during the SARS outbreak, John, because SARS, as you'll remember, is also a coronavirus, and it did show some promise, but in the laboratory, not in human beings. So, we're very early on this, and I think that everybody is hopeful that one of these therapeutics is going to work and provide some benefit. But John, look, we're not there yet, and I certainly don't want to be somebody who sort of casts a darker shadow over this. Nobody does, but we've got to be honest about this as well, and I don't want to provide false hope with regard to this.
That's an incredibly important point. And Dr. Rennie, I want to come back to you again. For those, we talked about this a bit earlier, but for those who were not listening to the briefing, and look, sometimes we need to take a deep breath here. Some things don't happen overnight. We live in the Amazon age. We think we can order something and have it delivered to our door the next day, if not within hours. So I do understand there's a problem here, and this is a pandemic, and the numbers are mounting quickly. But I want you, as someone who is on the front lines every day, putting your own health and life at risk to help these patients, listen to the president or the vice president on the subjects of these masks.
The masks, as an example, which were really a problem. We have helped out, and there are right now millions of masks being made.
3M is increasing their output to 420 million a year. At production in January, they make 35 million per month at that facility. And we're prioritizing the distribution of those.
Nobody ever heard of the number of masks that's been ordered. They're being made now, and many are available now.
We certainly hope the production part of that, Dr. Rennie, is true, and a week or a month from now, you won't have this question, but you have an urgent need today, correct?
That is absolutely correct. This may be unprecedented, but it was predictable. This production capacity should have been ramped up months ago. My colleagues on the front lines, we need masks today. We are pleading on social media, get me PPE to keep me and my patients safe. The president may say that things are being produced, but they sure as heck are not showing up in my state or in the states of all of my colleagues across the country. We need those masks and gowns now.
Dr. Rennie, appreciate it, and God bless you for your work on the front lines. Stay safe as you do it. Dr. Gupta as well, Tolu and Jackie, thanks for joining us.